Hello, my name is Michael, and I'm thrilled to announce our speaker, Hugo Mora-Torres. With over 20 years of experience in academic advising and a passion for empowering diverse students to achieve their medical dreams, Hugo has worked at prestigious institutions like UC Berkeley, Stanford, and the UC Davis School of Medicine. Today, he'll be tackling the top 10 myths that often hold pre-med students back and provide clear, actionable strategies to overcome them. Thank you for being here today, Hugo.
You can't hear you. You're on mute.
Thank you. We're recording now, so let me start over again. Uh, I've also worked at San Jose State. That's where I'm wearing my hat, and I've also worked at Cal. Most recently, I retired from there, so I want to wear my colors. This is because I had a nice shirt planned out for today, but I decided to wear my colors instead. Anyways, it's great to be here. Thank you, Jubin, for inviting me and helping me shape this presentation. Can we start the first slide, please? So, we decided to title this workshop "Debunking the top 10 pre-med myths and how to overcome them." Next slide, please. Now, the context for this presentation is because as an advisor who's worked for many, many years, one of the first and most prevalent issues that I deal with students is addressing the myths that they have that are propagated either by other advisors, or by other students, or the pre-med culture that can be toxic in campuses. And so doesn't mean you shouldn't engage yourself with the pre-med culture, but just be careful that there are myths that are propagated frequently, usually due to lack of knowledge, or bias. Okay, so that's why we decided to start addressing these myths. Go ahead, next slide, please. And here's my list. We're going to go through each one of these, okay, of myths. And you notice number 10. I decided to leave that one open for the Q&A, for people to share what their myths, what they perceive might be myths out there, and then that would be a way for me to address those questions. So number 1, medical school admission is highly competitive. Therefore, you need to have a really high GPA. And with that, related to that, what kind of number are we looking at? What do these numbers mean? Number 2 is related to the same. You must have a high MCAT score. And what number, what do these numbers mean, and what is a good number to shoot for? Number 3 is admissions committees at medical schools. Note that these numbers make great doctors. That's why you got to have high numbers, because you want to be a good doctor, you got to have high numbers. Number 4 is pre-med students need more than 1,000 hours of EMT to be competitive for medical school, because medical school like to see that kind of commitment, that kind of experience. Number 5 is pre-med students need research experience, absolutely must have it to be competitive for medical school. Number 6 is pre-med students need to volunteer working with or work with disadvantaged groups to stand out in your application. You got to do that. Number 7 is pre-med students must incorporate knowledge of social determinants of health and health disparities into their AMCAS application. And I'll explain more about that. Medical schools like to see a show and don't tell approach to writing one's personal statement and experience section of the AMCAS application. Number 9 is, what is the best medical school? One must attend a UC or other prestigious school to be a good doctor, or to get into a good residency match. Now, I may be overly ambitious, and we may not get through all of them, but we'll try. Okay. And if I go too fast, then we'll address the any questions you have during the question and answer session. Okay, next slide. All right. Regarding the numbers, so as far as you really have to have a high GPA, you have to have a GPA that shows you put a lot of effort into your academics, and that you're showing growth as you've gone through your academic process, from either community college, or basically your freshman, whether you did it at a 4-year university or at a community college, for your first year of undergraduate education to the point of graduation. So the most recent data from the American Association of Medical Colleges, otherwise known as the acronym AAMC, this is for matriculants, people who actually enrolled in medical school, as they're called matriculants. Their BCPM, also known as science GPA. They had a mean, statistical mean. So some of you have not taken statistics. So mean is a term that's related to average, okay? But the difference is that it has a standard deviation built into that number. So the statistical mean for um, for science GPA getting into medical school nationwide was 3.68, and the standard deviation was 0.31. Yeah, so that you just look at it like that, you say, whoa, 3.68. That's pretty high. It's not a 4.0, but it's still pretty high. And it's really hard to get a 3.68 science GPA by the time you graduate. Okay. So there's without unpacking it, that may seem to verify that you do need a high GPA. Absolutely must have it to be competitive for medical school. So medical schools are practicing holistic review. And in the next slide, I'll cover a little bit of that, but not right now. Holistic review as practiced by 156, all 156 members of the American Association of Medical Colleges. So when you apply to medical school, you'll have 156 options to apply to medical school, minus a few that are very state specific, like University of New Mexico and some of the Texas schools are very, you can only apply from there if you have a connection to University of New Mexico or University of Texas. But anyways, 156 medical schools of the allopathic brand, MD schools. You have another 60 or so doctor of osteopathic medicine options, and you have another 8 to 10 choices for international medical schools. So you have a lot of choices, okay? And these are types of medical schools, allopathic, the MD, osteopathic, the DO, or international medical school, which are MD. They all practice holistic review, slightly different. For example, international schools are going to be much more holistic in the way they evaluate you than allopathic schools. So you have a better chance of getting into those if you have lower numbers. Okay, back to the first bullet point. Factoring the standard deviation into that 3.68, you subtract 0.31 from 3.68, and you have the low end of competitive being a 3.37 science GPA by the time you apply. Okay. And this is for those who want to have a national approach or a national strategy applying to medical school. In other words, unfortunately, there's a mindset of the students that I work with from California that I'm only going to apply to California schools. If I don't get into a UC, I'm not a very good candidate. That's BS. You got to have you got to be willing to go to Rush in Chicago, University of Iowa School of Medicine in Iowa, Minnesota, New York schools, Detroit schools, et cetera. So you got to have a desire that's so deep to be a doctor that you want to go anywhere. That there's a valid medical school, a licensed medical school, and a accredited medical school that's going to train you and prepare you for the residency. I'll talk about more about what I mean by residency, medical school residency. So anyways, the purpose of this slide is to try to promote you to start thinking, you know what, I think I'm gonna have a national perspective when I'm applying for my medical schools. I'm going to use the MSAR. MSAR is an acronym for Medical School Admission Requirements. You can do a search for AAMC MSAR, and it'll take you to the website. I believe you have to pay like $45 for 1 year's access to this, and that will unlock all the wonderful information about, for example, Rush Medical School in Chicago. Their mean BCPM may be lower than that 3.6. I don't know for sure. I'm just using that as an example, hypothetical. They may have like a 3.5 mean BCPM with a larger standard deviation. I don't know. But the MSAR is, once you pay the $45 fee, it unlocks the data that you can use to select the schools where you would be a good fit for competitiveness. Okay. And in the previous presentation, I recommended the students apply to 18 to 25 schools to give themselves a good list of options where you might be a good fit for your metrics. Your metrics being your numbers, science GPA and MCAT score. Now, I didn't put in your overall GPA. Why? Because medical schools value highest your science GPA because you're going to be studying a lot of science in medical school. And to be honest, most students who have a good BCPM or science GPA tend to have a very comparable overall and other science, excuse me, other GPA as well. So that's why I just focus strictly on the science GPA for this presentation. The other thing that medical schools look at is your GPA trends. So in other words, if you find yourself graduating and getting ready to apply for medical school with a 3.3 or a little bit lower than that, doesn't mean you're toast. That means you shouldn't apply. It just means that you got to show in your GPA trends that maybe you started off your frosh year like I did when I first started college, 2.2 GPA. I wasn't ready. But with time and experience, my GPA started climbing, every semester after semester. So that by the time I graduated with a degree in anthropology, I was more like a 3.4. But my last 2 years, I was a 4.0. So anyways, that kind of trend may be competitive for some schools where you apply with slightly lower GPA at the lower end of the spectrum, around the 3.3, 3.2, 3.4 range. But then you had an upward trend that was really impressive, and combine that with a decent MCAT score, and I think you would be competitive for many, many schools if you do the MSAR as an analysis. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to use this graphic several times throughout this presentation. This is a graphic that's very busy, and it gives you an overview of the holistic review that all 156 members, and by the way, the DO schools are doing it as well, PA schools are doing it as well, dental schools are doing it as well, and international medical schools are also buying into this holistic review approach, which means that the metrics, that little gold box in the middle of that target, the metrics, test scores, MCAT scores, GPA and GPA trends are factored in to decision making. Then they're going to want to read your applications, your experiences, your personal statement, et cetera, to see what kind of attributes, which of these attributes, if you see the two inner circles, what attributes really shine consistently throughout your application. But the metrics is what gets you noticed by the medicals. You got to have above a certain baseline. I'm going to say for the GPA above a 3.3 science GPA, and they're going to notice you. Okay, it doesn't mean you get in. It's just like a 3.8, 4.0 doesn't mean you get accepted. I've had a lot of students who actually got rejected with 3.7, 3.8 GPAs and really good MCAT scores because their attributes and experiences weren't what the schools were looking for. So this is just to kind of unpack what holistic review means and how you as a student can try to understand this and use that as you plan your academic and your experience preparing for medical school. All right, let's go back to the next slide, please. Okay, so let's talk about MCAT scores, second part of the metrics, MCAT scores. A lot of you haven't looked at the MCAT, don't know what these mean, okay? But let's proceed anyway, so I'll try to unpack it a little bit. So the most recent data, the same sources I got the GPA from, shows that the students matriculated into medical school had a total MCAT of a mean of 512 with a standard deviation of 7. By total, I'm talking about the 4 sections of the MCAT, the scores added up. CARS, critical analytical reasoning section, the biochemical section, chemical physical section, psychology, sociological sources of behavior. Those are the 4 sections of the MCAT. If you add those scores up together, you come up with a total MCAT. So a 512 is going to be, according to the last MCAT, about 80th percentile. That means that 20% of the students scored above this or equal to, and 80% scored this or less. So approximately that. It depends from year to year. But a standard deviation of 7. So you do the same analysis. You track 7 from 512, and you come up with a 505. So a 505 is the low end of competitor, just like a 3.3 something in the previous slide would be the low end of competitor for the science GPA. Okay. Again, this doesn't mean a lot to you. However, I'm gonna do a caveat here. California medical schools are the most competitive in the country, aside from the Harvards, the the Dukes, et cetera, the privates. Of all the public uh, medical schools, California medical schools are the most competitive. Therefore, the 505 is going to be, you could probably need a little higher score than that. And the same for the MCAT score as well. Okay. Um, Again, use the MSAR when you're getting ready to apply to help you identify the schools where you might be the best fit. Okay, you have 156 choices to choose from. Okay, next slide, please. All right. So, do admissions committee feel that these numbers indicate you're going to be a great doctor? And the answer is no. These numbers just mean that medical schools, when you're above the 503, 50, I'm sorry, the 3.3 or 3.4 science GPA, when you're above the 505 MCAT score, that just instills confidence in the medical school admissions committee that you, the applicant, can probably make it through medical school without many issues and graduate in 4 years. Medical schools do not want to see you graduating in 4 years from one semester, 5 years. They don't have a structure to support students who are going to take a, repeat a class or two classes or three classes, or who didn't pass national boards, you know, too often. I think, believe me, if you don't pass the national boards by the third try, you're kicked out of medical school, which is very, 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 very rare. The selection process that they're doing that they put you through is to instill confidence that the medical school admissions committee can graduate you in 4 years and that you'll pass all the tests. So this I cut and paste it starting with selection, second line all the way to the bottom, directly from the holistic review section of the MCAT. When you get the slides, you click on holistic review, that'll take you to the website. But you can do your own search for AAMC holistic review, and it'll give you this definition or this guideline for what holistic review means to the AAMC schools. And I bolded item C, performance data. So what that means is that medical schools track how medical students do year 1, 2, 3, and 4, and they do that historically for 4 or 5 years. And they can say, you know what? We're accepting some students with a 3.3, 3.2, and either they flunked out, they didn't make it through medical school, or they're doing well. They're keeping up with everybody else. They're adding spice to the class. They're an asset. Okay. And the caveat being, does the school have the available support services to ensure success? Many schools do have a very robust student success center where they have tutors, where they have learning skills specialists, where they have counseling and psychological services, because sometimes people suffer from anxiety, et cetera, et cetera. So some schools have a very robust student success center or staff, and therefore they can accept and feel comfortable accepting students who have these lower numbers and still graduate them in a timely manner, and they pass the national board step 1 and 2 in a timely manner. And then item number 2 is programs consider the context of each applicant to understand how their unique educational opportunities, financial resources, communities, and lived experiences may contribute to the program and the practice of medicine. When you have time on your own, read this several times. This encapsulates what holistic review means. They're saying, yes, the numbers only matter for us to have confidence this person is going to graduate, but we're really looking at experiences, life experiences, work experiences, volunteer experiences, research, whatever they have, we're going to take it all into context and see what attributes they have that we think make good medical students, and as a consequence, good doctors. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so I recommend. Okay, so what they mean by medical schools mean by you, the student, being able to absorb and process high volumes of high medical rigor, high science rigor classes, high volumes of high science rigor classes in a very short time. The analogy is, can you drink water from a fire hydrant and not drown? That's why these numbers matter to medical schools. And there's a decent book I have some problems with it, but it's free if you have Kindle. Plain Doctor by John Lawrence. It's a little bit jaded. I mean, old. It's like 20 years old, but still there's some relevancy to the experience of going through medical school and the challenges of how much you have to learn, how much you have to study, et cetera, et cetera, how crazy it can be. Just so you know, and there's other books out there, by the way, but I found this one easy to read, fast reading, and this guy's kind of funny. He's a good writer. It's kind of funny, without being too without funny and serious at the same time. Okay, next slide, please. All right. So this is a very busy graphic, a sample of medical school curriculum and why these numbers matter to the medical schools. I just want to focus on year one, that blue box. And this is typical for most medical schools, by the way. When you look at, if you do a search for four-year curriculum, medical school, it's going to give you 40, 50 choices from different medical schools. This is the one that's easiest to read for me. Anyways, the blue box just shows you that the very first months of medical school, August through November, you got to take all these classes. At least at Harvard, some schools, kind of spread it out over the full year. But you gotta be ready at Harvard to go through biochemistry, cell biology, genetics, developmental biology, introduction to anatomy, physiology, histology, pharmacology, pathology. That's a lot of ologies. And so you got to be ready, at least at Harvard. Against other schools will spread it out a little bit more, what do you call it, judiciously. Okay. Um, why? Because the content from year one and year two, as well as you're going to be tested on year three, where it says USMLE, right here where it says USMLE, study/step one exam. If you look at that, that's 3 months that Harvard sets aside for you to to focus on preparing for the United States Medical Licensing Exam, which is step one. This is also known as step one. It's a big test. It's harder than the MCAT. If you're thinking the MCAT was hard, this is going to be 2 or 3 times harder. But you'll be, you won't be working. You won't be at home. You're going to be in a cohort of 100, 120 students who are just as committed, just as um, focused as you are for those 2 or 3 months. You're going to be in a learning environment. Most of them are pretty friendly and like, working with each other as in group learning. So your chances of you passing the exam through group learning, through becoming more efficient in the way you process knowledge, is going to be very, very good. Like most medical schools, most medical students pass national boards step one at a 94% rate nationwide. That means you pass it. If you don't pass it the first time, sit out for 3 months, study again. Now, and then you take the test again, and then it goes up to 98%, 98 or 99%. If you don't pass it a second time, you do it one more time, and you got to pass it. Again, very, very small percentage of students flunk out, usually due to anxiety, personal issues, not due to intelligence or having a good science foundation. Usually it's personal issues that affect their ability to focus and prepare for the national board step one. Okay, so that's why these metrics matter. Not that you're a 4.0, assures that you're going to pass through this material very easily. Again, medical schools, through their data, through the way they support students, have realized that we can accept a student, not a lot of students, but a few students with that 3.3, 3.4 science GPA, with that MCAT score of 505, okay? Because they bring some other attributes to the class that really adds value, that adds spice, that adds flavor, that adds depth to our 100 and 125 students that we accept. All right, next slide, please. We can skip down let's go forward again. All right. I had a student recently who told me, Hugo, I'm doing my post-bac, I'm getting the grades that I want, but I'm concerned. I only have 400 hours of volunteering. I don't have any clinical experience. And I read someplace on Reddit that students are averaging 1,000 hours as an EMT to stand out in the application process. And that's just not one student. I've heard many students tell me something similar about their concerns about why being ready to apply for medical school. So standing out, be competitive. You don't need 1,000 hours, okay? So that's false. There's no, if you look at any medical school admissions requirements, I'm going to ask you to, on your own, do a search for UC Davis School of Medicine prerequisites, UCLA School of Medicine prerequisites, University of Iowa School of Medicine prerequisites. After the 10th try, you're going to give up. Say, Ugo's right. Nowhere in these schools' website that I see must have X, Y, or Z amount of clinical experience hours before I apply. Okay, I've done it, so you can try yourself. However, clinical experience is highly recommended, and there are a variety of options. Okay, so we'll talk about why these are recommended. So most students will look at programs such as emergency medical technician, emergency emergency room technician, medical assistant, CNA, programs that require for you to get some kind of training and a certification as a source. Why? Because you get paid, and and because you're getting paid, you get hands-on experience. That's if you have the time and you have the resource, because these can be expensive. Okay, and if you're doing, either time because you started as early during your undergraduate, or you decided to take a gap year or 2 or 3. Okay. Earlier in a previous session, I mentioned that the average first year medical student is 25 and a half years old. That means to me that many of them took a year or 2 or 3 after graduating to apply for medical school, and they invested in some of these experiences. All right. Other experiences that don't require certification, medical scribe, hospital volunteer, even medical translator. Now, medical translator may require some level of certification, and increasingly medical scribes are requiring some level of certification as well. But there's still a lot of jobs that will hire you as a medical scribe without a lot of training, but at least having medical terminology and being able to type really, really fast and accurately. For really, really fast to me means above 50 words per minute. I type at 20 to 30 words per minute, but most college students can, with some practice and some training, can pass a typing test for 60 words per minute pretty easily. All right. Anyways, these types of experiences can act as a reality check of what patient care really entails. In other words, when you were a high school student and when you first decided you want to be a doctor, many of us were uh, very naive of what patient care entails. So these types of experiences will give you more of a realistic perception of what patient care entails, because you can be training and practicing in a healthcare system that is very complicated. HMOs, there's all kinds of terminology being involved, billing statements, what can I prescribe? What can you not prescribe because it's not covered by your insurance company? Um, either you go to a private hospital to a public hospital. It's very complicated. It's also very expensive. It's also increasingly more dependent on high technology, MRIs, CT scans. A good example is my wife recently went to the ER for a head injury, um, and she went to 4 or 5 different exams and things like that. And the only one that communicated was a nurse. The ER doctor was in a room handling 5 or 6 patients and one looking at all the screens, giving orders. Finally, when they found out what was going on, just before he dismissed us, after 4 hours and 5 different tests and analysis and everything, he came to see her and told her what was going on. He was relying on technology and information coming to him from 5 different screens, dealing with 5 different patients. Okay. That's Kaiser Hospital recently. So, anyways, so that's a reality check. And ER techs were in there observing all this. They were learning the terminology, um, etc. The other reason you might want to engage and invest in medical experience is because you're going to find mentors. Okay. But you're also going to have to learn how to deal with jaded health professionals. I've had many students who were told by people who they were volunteering with or working with, hey, don't be a doctor, be a nurse, because you're done faster. You don't have to deal with all this bullshit, all the forms and insurance and long hours and having to work on Christmas. If you want a family life, be a nurse, don't be a doctor, or be a PA. So there are some jaded health professionals out there who are gonna try to dissuade you from being a doctor, and you got to learn how to deal with that constructively. But you're also gonna hire some people who are gonna are gonna like be great mentors for you and realistically tell you, recommend that you continue along this pathway. Ultimately, when you connect with somebody, it's a good time to ask for a letter of recommendation. There's recommendation from objective individuals are valued by medical schools because the way you behaved, your investment into patient care, if your multilingual ability, if you had construct conversations and interactions with staff, patients, all that is being observed by the health professionals, and those could lead to very good letters of recommendation. So that's one reason why, clinical experience, and there's no number to it, okay? I've seen some students do 1,000 hours and learn very little. I've seen some students do 100 hours and learn a lot. It all depends on your mindset and willingness to learn and to be open and just analytical and critical and also keeping a journal. When you get home after every clinical experience, what did you learn? Is there any anecdotal stories you can tell to illuminate what you learned? Okay. Next slide, please. All right. Pre-med students absolutely need research experience to be most competitive for medical schools. False. Why would you want to do research? Not in a negative way. Many students say, you know what? I'm just curious. Or, I've taken biochemistry and I see how all this knowledge of biochemistry was discovered by people doing research. And I think I want to experience that. I want to learn how to read science journals critically. I want to learn how science is practiced, and not just how in human, introductory human biology. And when first year or second year, you take introduction to human biology, and they talk about certain research that was conducted, et cetera, and the scientific method, and it's kind of like some obscure terms, and some people say, I want to actually live that experience. So that's why you might want to do research. I had a student who was married at a very young age, going through San Jose State, and he actually started doing research. Why? Because it paid, and he needed to support his family. So for him, it was a job. However, he grew to love it. He started doing presentations. He felt himself growing as a person, as a scientist. So that it became his passion. He ended up doing his MD, PhD at Mayo School of Medicine because, it grew from a job, something practical, to something like a big step in his professional growth. So that's just Horacio's story. The other reason why medical schools don't absolutely require research is because not every pre-med gets an opportunity to do research. At UC Berkeley, where I worked with most recently, there's a lot of research opportunity. But even then, not every student gets a chance because, it's very competitive. And you have students who will do one and then two or three or four other research opportunities where somebody is like applying, and not getting in. So is that fair to that student who, for whatever reason, can't get research experience even though they tried? No, it's not fair to them, and doesn't make them less competitive or prepared for medical school. At San Jose State, there's a lot fewer research opportunities than at UC Berkeley. That may be a universal mimosias use. They may not have the research bandwidth as many UCs do, because research is funded primarily from federal funds, and the UCs tend to be more competitive and get larger amounts of money coming into the schools, which means more opportunities for students to work and volunteer in the research environments. So there's a disparity in the educational systems, and so that's why medical schools don't absolutely require it. Again, if you like it and you get it, great, but it's not required. Don't feel like you're less of an applicant if you don't have it. While medical schools do appreciate research in your resume, is only absolutely necessary for you if you want to do the MD and the PhD combined, which is a long process. So you gotta know what you're getting into. Again, keep a journal. Keep a journal and include any anecdotal stories while keeping in mind HIPAA constrictions. Don't use names and addresses and stuff like that. Identifiers of who's involved in your stories and your anecdotal stories. All right. Next slide, please. I've had many students who are not members of underrepresented groups in medicine, um, who said, I got to get volunteer experience with disadvantaged groups because medical schools like that. They think that's a good way to stand out. And that's not necessarily true. It is recommended that you do it, but only if your heart is in it. Only if you're really open to realizing this is a noble act for you to work with disadvantaged groups, whether the disadvantaged groups are children, in literacy projects, girls learning how to code, young girls in, again, underrepresented, educationally underserved communities, homeless, immigrants. Um, there's a few other categories that are considered disadvantaged, educationally, economically disadvantaged groups. They're also known as vulnerable communities. So again, doing it is a noble act, and you should only do it if you invest yourself wholeheartedly in a non-judgmental way. It's a good way to step out of your comfort zone and learn how to adjust. You're going to be challenged by behavior, by work conditions, by hours, by smells, by mental illness. People are experiencing mental illness, schizophrenia. You got to learn how to be safe while you're doing this as well. You're going to improve your language skills, not just an additional, like say, if you're a native English speaker, learning Spanish, Hindi, any of the other language where the people who are immigrants use, but also the language of youth. Inner city youth have a different language than college English. So you've got to learn how to talk like the youth do. There's even social media terminology, you know. Um, so yeah, so it helps you learn how to adjust and improve your language skills. Okay. It's also an opportunity to apply public health theory while remembering that you're dealing with people and not study subjects. And I'll talk more about this in the next slide. It's a way to improve your street smarts. Okay. Um, Sometimes to survive the streets, people gotta hustle, they gotta lie, they gotta scheme, and the more you work with people, the more you learn. Oh, this person's hustling me because they want X, Y, and Z. I regave them, clothes once, and they got back in line. They want more clothes. Either they have a partner who needs the clothes, or they're gonna sell it for extra money. But if I do that, if I give them a second load of clothes, or a second pair of shoes, you know, while I'm working as a volunteer in the homeless shelter, then that means somebody else may not get them. So I gotta constructively confront this person and let them know that I remember them from the time they were here before, and not get into a shouting match, not start judging. But you'll learn, other people will teach you, but you'll learn how to de-escalate and handle conflict with either other volunteers or with the people that you're serving. And that's what I call the caption of improving your street smarts. You're also going to, as consequence, grow your interpersonal skills. Okay, you're going to mature the lot by the more interactions you have with people that are volunteering, with supervisors from the where you're volunteering, or from the clients that you're serving. Every experience is going to add a layer upon layer of interpersonal skills, so that by the time you've had, 3 or 4 years of this, if you get that far, you will say, "Whoa, I remember the first time I had to deal with a conflict. I was like lost, and now I'm very comfortable. I'm more confident in dealing with conflict, dealing with patients, and still not being jaded, not judging them for who they are, where they're at, and who they are." Okay, next slide, please. Uh, Pre-med students must incorporate working knowledge of social determinants of health and health disparities into AMCAS applications. Um, I see a lot of students who, when they apply to medical school, and they have book knowledge of this, and they did a few hours of volunteering, and they try to, and try to really build it up, and it sounds more like a public health essay than an essay of service. So you do not have to incorporate it. Okay, it is appreciated if you put when you describe the activity in your application or in your personal statement, you describe it as in a way that it sounds like you're really enjoying the service, or that's part of your life experience, and you kind of you know mention it that you understand what social determinants of health are and how they are related to health disparities and how they can affect communities and individuals. Okay. So it's really a fine line. It takes a little bit of time for you to get that if you're going to describe it in your application, but it's not a must. Okay, you will be asked some questions in the supplementary essays where you have more of an opportunity to show that you understand social determinants of health and health disparities and how they impact health disparities and how they impact the way you practice medicine as a medical student and as a resident and as a doctor. But you do not have to incorporate it, but it is recommended that you process your experiences through the lens, through the framework of social determinants of health and and also those consequence health disparities. For some of us, we grew up in these communities who are experiencing, I won't say victims, but are experiencing health disparities because of our socioeconomic status, of our access to healthcare, of our access to health insurance, of our access to culturally competent healthcare, of our access to quality education. If we, I come from that community, and when I first read the social determinants of health disparity, I go, oh my God, there's actually a really cool framework of what I've experienced as a person growing up in a barrio, a low socioeconomic neighborhood where violence and drug abuse and all these things were pretty common, but that was just home for me. Anyways, yes, I hope that explains that myth. Next slide, please. Oh, so I think I forgot some slides. Um, so what is? Let me ask. I have the slides here, but I'm gonna pose a question. What is the best medical school in the country? And the answer is the one you get into. If you happen to get into a Davis, Stanford, a Harvard, that's the best medical school. You happen to get into Rush, Iowa, uh, St. George's in the Caribbean, Universidad Autónoma de Guadalajara in Mexico. That is the best medical school because any medical school is going to give you an opportunity to learn the material to pass national board step one, give you the clinical experience and the coaching to pass national board step two during the year 3 or 4 of medical school, graduate you with a medical degree that's from a reputable school, an accredited school, which is then going to prepare you to apply to a U.S. residency program where you can then complete your training as an internal medicine doctor, family practice doctor, pediatric doctor. So and what I'm trying to tell you is keep an open mind. Definitely challenge yourself to be the best at biology, the best at biochemistry, the best at sociology that you can, because you can apply this knowledge. In other words, having high standards for yourself is a good trait to have as you go forward and getting ready to become a clinician, PA, RN, MD, DO. So because medicine has high standards, a mistake in your clinical experience can lead to bad consequences, a death, overdose, et cetera, et cetera. So you want to, you know, learn from every so-called mistake that you're making now, um, and get better and better and better and better at it. You want to improve um, your study skills, your learning skills, to become more efficient at processing scientific rigor in your courses, and you will. The more you do it, the easier it gets. You want to build your confidence so that when you apply to medical school, you are now what I call humbly confident, as opposed to arrogantly confident. There's very few of my students who are arrogantly confident. They're like, oh, I got a 4.0 and I got a great MCAT score. Yeah, I'm gonna get into Stanford. I'm gonna get into this. That's arrogantly confident. Oh, and I did my 1,000 hours, and I did research. I got all the check marks that medical schools are looking for, you know, and when they communicate to people, they come across as arrogantly confident, and they may have trouble getting into medical school versus being humbly confident and saying, I've worked very hard. I'm proud of my accomplishments. I could have done a little better here and there, But so far, I'm here. I graduated, and I'm in a good position to apply for medical school, given what Hugo said today about MCAT and GPA scores. And I invested wholeheartedly into my research. I mean, into my volunteer experience, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about myself, and I learned about medicine, about people, and I think I translated that pretty well. I'm never happy with the way I wrote it, but I think I did the job. Okay, that's the kind of humble confidence that gets you deep into the admissions process, and hopefully you do a good job in the interview that gets you accepted in more, at least one, hopefully more than one place. I think those are the last two slides that I wanted to cover, and I, said them very, very briefly. But now I wanted to open up to suggestions from people about that can be a start to our Q&A about myths that they think I might be myths or are they fact. And is there a chat or is there a Q&A?
Q&A.
Um,
Q&A.
y-
So there's one question somebody has, and you guys post your questions because as soon as we're done with questions, we're all leaving. So if you don't have questions, we're not going to try to create things for you, content for you. So, question is, how do we stand out in the medical school application when everyone's doing similar things such as research, clinical experience, leadership, as well as GPA?
all right. And I'm gonna give you my pet peeve. My pet peeve is try not to use the word stand out. Okay. To convert your mindset to how do I prepare best? What's my best approach for me to prepare for a career as a clinician authentically? Because people that are authentic, in other words, they go into research because they really like research, or they start research thinking, I'm going to try to like it, but I don't really like it. I'm going to switch to something else. I'm going to invest my time in, for example, becoming an EMT or working in, as getting clinical experience. So in other words, you don't have to check every box. That's so you can quote unquote stand out. You want to be introspective if you're doing research or if you're doing volunteering or if you're working in a clinic in some kind of capacity, and be introspective. What am I learning from this? How is this preparing me for for medicine? Am I meeting people that are really enhancing my perspective on science, on the world, on patient care, on ethics? Okay, because you want to continue growing. Every experience that you have should challenge you to grow, and that's what I mean by being authentic. If you do that, then you'll stand out. But don't do it because you want to stand out. Do it because you're investing authentically into this experience, and you're gauging that you're growing and learning a lot.
Someone asks on how it looks to medical schools when you retake a class after you fail it.
You have to ask yourself, the first thing you want to do is, why did, what could I have done better? Did I fail it because I got off to a bad start? I didn't, I was partying too much. Um, I was not managing my time well. I was focusing on social media, trying to get as many likes as possible, trying to be an influencer. Was I working too many jobs? Some students have to work a lot of hours. And should I instead, obviously I can't do both and do it well. Some students are able to work jobs and get decent grades. Most of us are not. Most of us need to realize that, you know what? I think I'm gonna stop working two jobs, maybe work no jobs if I can, and take out a loan. Take out a loan because a loan is an investment in yourself, and then and not only that, but review: am I studying strategically, or am I, starting to study at 11 o'clock in the evening, studying until 4 o'clock in the morning, sleeping 3 hours, getting up to go to physics class, and I'm asleep in physics class, 8 o'clock physics class, because my brain is tired. So that's a waste of time. So is there a way that I can manage my time better so that I'm still doing quality, let's say 8 to 10 hours of quality study of physics per week, and then another 8 to 10 hours of quality study of organic chemistry per week. Quality being when you're alert and you're getting a lot of good mental processing of knowledge. Okay, so you got to identify your best approach for time management, because The first task the medical students do, and I've worked with many medical students, is they make a map of all the classes they got to take, when they're going to study for these classes, when they're going to meet with study groups, and when I'm going to go to the gym, when I'm going to go to to co- uh to 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 whatever spiritual practice they have, church, the mosque, the whatever. When am I gonna, take care of myself by calling my mom, by calling my significant other? They put all that into 24 hours a day, X amount of hours per week, Monday through Sunday. There's very little time for you to take off. So, anyways, they practice very, 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 very good time management. So this is a good time for you to start doing that. Oh, by the way, uh, if somebody can open up a browser in your own at home and type in Amazon Becoming a Master Student. It's about a $65 book, and it's a very, very good way for you to practice being a master student, a more efficient and effective student. They do have a very significant section on time management, because I found that most of my students who were struggling were having issues with time management. Prioritization as well is part of time management. I mentioned that, you know, you have to prioritize having a roof, food, and you have to work. But you may have to say, look, I'm going to prioritize taking a loan out this semester and see if I'm able to focus on just being a student and I get the results that I want. Combining that with becoming a master student, and I'm learning how to be a more efficient student. So instead of reading in a very passive way, flashcards over and over and over and over, hoping that something sticks, I'm going to adjust my approach because I learned from becoming a master student, and I'm going to convert flashcards into a more active form of learning. I'm going to maybe ask read the definition first and see if I come up with a word, or read the word, and then, it's like a game. Challenge yourself. Well, I'm going to start using mnemonics more to help me memorize. Or I'm going to try using a flow diagram to help me memorize, understand big concepts. So you're gonna increase your tool set for becoming a good student, and that's part of the process. Hopefully, your first year, so that you're getting better and better grades and more efficient. Because when you get to medical school, you don't want to think about learning. You should be on autopilot, and it starts with now through the MCAT, and it carries over to medical school. So most medical students are not geniuses. They're very, very intelligent, just like you are. But more importantly, they're very efficient learners. They have their study skills down packed. They're not trying to find out how to memorize. They've already realized what memory techniques work for themselves, whether it's mnemonics or a combination of all the above. And I think the Becoming a Master Student book is a very good resource for people. Um, did I answer the question? Okay.
Yes, thank you for answering it. The next question is your thoughts comparing and contrasting established post-bac programs or kind of doing it on your own, just taking your own classes at community colleges.
So if your GPA is low, if you're not happy with your GPA, then you really need to take upper division biology classes, science classes at four-year university. So uh, community colleges are good if you need to redo or do for the first time your pre-med requirements, general chemistry, human biology, physics, organic chemistry. Those are the pre-med requirements. Biochemistry may be taught at some community colleges, but it's not considered upper division. You really need to be taking biochemistry at a four university or UC Extension. UC Extension has very good courses that if you want to do it yourself post back, then that's then UC extensions are good options for that. Um, I actually recommend a more formal post back because there's a there's a holistic approach. They're going to look at your study skills. They're going to have advisors who are ready to help you with personal statements, with interviews. Some of them may even incorporate an MCAT prep program. Some of them may even incorporate a clinical experience component as well. So if you can afford it, if you can find a way to afford a post-bac, I would recommend a formal post-bac over a do-it-yourself post-bac. But if for whatever reason the DIY postbac is your only option, that'll work. It's up to you to make it work.
The only thing that I would add is if you're a first year student and you're already thinking about post-bac, stop it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's another myth that's floated around, or bad advice that's floated around pre-med cultures or on the internet, is that, yeah, you have a safety net so, you know, just do what you can, go work, go play, whatever. So definitely enjoy college. But remember, if you're preparing for medicine, you're committing yourself to something that's considered by many a calling. It's almost like being a priest, if you will, or a cleric of some sort. You you have to high you have to have high values for human life and science, and using science as a tool, your tool for helping people achieve maximum wellness. That's my definition of health, helping people achieve maximum wellness. Define it for yourself, and make that your mission statement. And everything you do going forward is going to prepare you for that. You know, uh, it doesn't mean you're born an all-star from day one in college, but that means that's your goal, is to become really, really, really high achieving in everything that you do. And sometimes you have a straight line toward development. Sometimes you have a little bit more of a slow learning curve. But the point is, you get that learning curve eventually.
Thank you. The next question asks about the timeline if someone were to apply immediately upon graduating. When do you suggest they should take their MCAT?
If you're going to apply immediately, you got to have your MCAT ready by June 1st, or the very latest, take the maybe the May MCAT, because that would be ready by July 1st. If your numbers, your science GPA is good enough, again, that's what do you call this? It's subjective. What is good enough. You may get supplementaries like early July if you apply early June, because it takes 4 to 6 weeks, depends on when you apply, for the technicians at AAMC to process your application, and for it to get to the medical schools. And so in general, okay, there's some aberrations there, but in general, you won't start getting supplementaries or rejection letters till 4 to 6 weeks after submitting your AMCAS application. And your MCAS scores got to be ready by the time that your AMCAS application gets routed from AMCAS to the medical school that you listed. So at the latest, I would say May. The latest MCAT you want to take is early May.
Yeah, and I would just say that this is not like some sort of checklist thing that you need to take. If you're taking 21 units to graduate, or 21 units to do that, and you're working 40 hours a week, and you're doing 20 hours of research, and you're taking care of your grandma and all of these different things, don't take the MCAT, because that is you're gonna not do well. And it's
Yeah,
not that you're not smart, it's just that it has nothing smartness has nothing to do with it. You just don't have time to do it. So do the MCAT once, and when you're fully prepared. Like, look at it
yeah,
as a job. Like, I know someone who took the MCAT the first time and did really bad, then decided to take it the second time and did the same exact thing the first time, and still didn't, actually did worse. And I said, look, I'm just telling you this as a friend. This is a friend, so I could be critical. And I said, doing the same thing over and over again is called insanity. You need to treat this as a job. It is a job. It is a job that you're going to be spending the next 30 years of your life in a career. So this is not some sort of test that you take, rolling out of bed. And so take it as a job. So he basically like moved out to rural Washington, where his grandmother lived, for 5 months, and that's all he did. He studied, he studied, and I think he was right next to a college, so he would just go to the library, and then that's what he did for 5 months, and he was able to do it. He put all the stuff in a storage, did all that stuff, and he actually scored in like the 98th percentile. So it's
Yeah.
you gotta do it. You gotta make that sacrifice. And the difference between people that start college that are pre-med and the people that get into medical school is not intelligence. It's people that are willing to commit and put in the time and make those sacrifices. Because you're gonna have to make sacrifices all through your life. And if you're not, you have to choose to do that. And so taking the MCAT is a big commitment because it is the rest of your life. So anyways, sorry, getting off
Great.
my
No, that's great. Thank you. Um, Remember I showed you earlier a slide of Harvard School of Medicine's 4-year curriculum, and somewhere in year 3 there was a 3-month period where they were assigned to study for the national board step 1, 3-month period. Mr. Jubin mentioned his friend studied 5 months. My experience has been working with students who were happy with their MCAT scores. In general, it was a solid 3-month process of them uh, not 24 hours a week, but more like 12 hours per day for 3 months or so, breaking it up, with a sane schedule of, some review, a break, a review, a break, a practice test, a problem set. There's some curriculums out there. I think Test Exam Crackers has a sample curriculum that I think is decent that you can just borrow. You don't have to buy it you can just borrow off the website. Anyways, there's some there's some study schedules out there floating around, but the key thing is that they be multi they're not just be like all day chemistry, all day physics, reading the text over and over. No, it's a combination of things with an emphasis on practice tests. But anyways, 3 months with a sound, a very good strategic approach to studying. If you can, and again, try to find a way where you can set aside 12 hours per day or so, 8 to 10 hours per day over a 3-month period to give yourself a chance to do well in the MCAT. So it's about resources. Those that have the resources tend to do better. Not the more intelligent, just the resources. It's also about a mindset. Like Judy mentioned, being able to sacrifice. So during those 3 months, very little partying time, very little social media. Uh, Definitely go to temple or wherever you practice spirituality if that's you. Definitely go for walks. Definitely include exercise. Definitely include good nutrition. Most importantly, include good sleep. Okay, because you want to be fresh and energized for the MCAT. You don't want to show up sleep deprived or with hunger pangs or undernourished for an MCAT. Treat it as an athletic event and a marathon.
Yeah, just
Thank you.
making a pitch in the next 2 months. We're doing at least 6 sessions on the MCAT. So we have experts, we have people that did it on their own, and we have somebody else that took it 3 times. So we're gonna have a bunch of events for MCAT. So try to come to those. We're posting them as we're posting them usually a month ahead of time, but
Great.
they're posted. So just go to the website and look and sign up and show up. And then
One last,
we also have like I'll probably say over 30 hours of MCAT on our YouTube channel and on our website, and you can download all the material. And I think even like there's like 6 GB of MCAT material that's posted on our site. So
yep. And do a search for Khan Academy MCAT. It's free material, free content, and it's from the AMCAS. I mean, the American Association of Medical Colleges, AAMC. They work with Khan Academy to put this content out there to demystify the MCAT. So in other words, when do you start preparing for the MCAT? On your spare time, not actually preparing, just reading some of the passages for the cars, reading some of the passages because you just took organic chemistry, reading the passages for organic chemistry. You're not really preparing. You're more demystifying and getting used to the format, the language, the way the questions are asked. This is just like dabbling, if you will, and getting your curiosity satisfied. And but I don't think this is really MCAT prep. This is more demystifying and kind of getting you used to what the MCAT symbolizes. What it's about. MCAT prep really requires a program, a process, a very intense period of your life. That's MCAT prep. This is more MCAT demystification. One more question, or we can be done.
I have one question. Someone wants to know what advice you would have between someone who's debating a career, as either a physician's assistant or an MD. Um, they said their heart is set on being an MD, but people are telling them to choose the faster option, and they're deciding whether or not to give in to the doubt or fear. They're currently working as a CMA, and they're an undergraduate, and they want to start taking classes this summer.
I'm a firm believer in something doing a cost benefit analysis. So you make get a piece of paper and put PA on top, another piece of paper, put MD, make a column for plus, another column for minus for each of these two options. And in the plus, say, what are the benefits of being a PA? What are the benefits of being an MD? And the negative, not really negative, but that could be more investing. What do I have to invest to become a PA? What do I have to invest in to become an MD? Okay. And I know it's very simple. If we had half an hour, I could talk to you at length about what are we could have a conversation about, from your perspective, what are the benefits of being a PA? From your perspective, what what are the benefits of being a doctor? How do they compare? The other thing is, what are your stressors in your life? Some people have parents who are experiencing homelessness or unhoused, and they want to graduate as soon as possible and help them out. The PA route's going to be the way, because they have economic factors that are, others may have a partner who is not going to be patient and wait for them to finish medical school. And so this partner is important to me. I'm going to keep this partner. So I'm going to go to the PA route because, I'm still going to be a clinician. And now hopefully I'll still have my partner and be patient enough. Other people say, you know what, that's not the partner for me. I'm going to go to medical school and I'll find a different partner along the way. So these are all the reasons you have to go through a cost benefit analysis of some sort, because now you're thinking more with your brain, analytically, and less with your heart, and try not to listen to people. Listen to them only for help them flesh out what the pros and cons are of both of these, and then shut them out because it's your choice. Jubin, you had something
No,
to add?
I would just say that there used to be a commercial, only you can prevent forest fire, and I would just say only you can make that decision. Don't
Yeah.
leave somebody else's expectations, dreams. I would even go to the further and say if you have a partner who's not supporting you, should they be your partner? I mean, I would go to that far, but that's just me. At the end of the day, you're going to have to make that decision because you're the one who's going to put in the time, effort, energy, and you're going to have to, be happy with yourself. You don't want to wake up at 80 years old and saying, "Oh, I wish I would have done this. Oh, I wish I would have done that." Um, and those decisions are personal, like Mr. Mora-Torres said that, for you, you may have a lot of things, external factors in your life that nobody else knows about. If you have, your parents that are homeless and you need to hurry up, like that's not a joke. Like you got to take that into consideration. Um, but also know that there's differences between a PA and an MD, far vast in how you practice and how you where you could live. I mean, like some states, PAs have a lot of leeways and other places have a lot of restrictions and but also once you're an MD and you finish residency, you can't change. And the PA, you could change, being a ER PA to become a plastic surgery PA. So there's all of these things that nobody can really answer for you and what's going to make you happy. And this is not like some 30-second thing that we could tell you what to do. You're going to have to sit down and take out, a piece of paper with, you know, and figure out what you want out of life and what is going to bring you happiness and joy and all of those different things because, we can't tell that for you. You gotta do that yourself. And I wish we could tell you the 30-second TikTok answer, but it's
No.
not. It's a very complex thing because it is the rest of your life, and you know, just like only you can prevent forest fires, only you can make that decision.
We're gonna make that into a Smokey the Bear meme with your voice.
Yeah, only you can make.
All right, folks. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for being such a good audience. And you guys have a good day.
All right, thanks. I'm gonna try to raise some of the answers. I'm gonna try to answer some of those things best I can. Hello?
Yes.
Oh, no, I know you have to run. So some people have some questions that we're gonna try to answer as best we can. So there's
Okay.
like six more questions. So if you have to go, I understand you have to run.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
I'll try to
I'm logging
answer
off.
the best I can.
I'm logging
Um,
off then.